I watched Marcus get pulled aside by 3 TSA agents through the security camera feed on my phone, and I smiled. He thought he was being clever. First class to Tokyo, upgraded with my million-miler status, while I sat in the terminal coffee shop, deliberately on a different airline, deliberately on a different flight. He didn't know I could see him. He didn't know about the secondary screening alert I'd attached to my account. He didn't know that the champagne he'd be sipping in the Admiral's Club would be the last luxury he'd enjoy for a very long time. Most importantly, Marcus didn't know I'd already lived through this betrayal once before. The agents weren't smiling as they escorted him to a private room. His mistress, my former best friend Shayna, stood frozen at the security checkpoint, her Birkin bag, bought with my money, I knew now, dangling from her arm. She looked around frantically, but Marcus was already gone. I took a sip of my overpriced latte and remembered the first time I'd lived this day. 6 months ago, or 23 years ago, depending on how you counted, I died on a rainy Tuesday in November. I was 41 years old, I'd built a career as a pharmaceutical sales executive, traveling constantly, racking up airline miles and hotel points like they were Pokemon cards. My status was presidential platinum, the kind that got me into any lounge, any upgrade, anytime. I'd earned every mile through red eyes and delayed connections and eating sad airport salads at 11 p.m. Marcus had been my husband for 15 years. We'd met at a medical conference when I was 26, and he was a charming pharmaceutical rep with a mediocre territory and big dreams. I'd helped him, introduced him to my contacts, pulled him up with me as I climbed. Within 5 years, he had my old territory. Within 10, he was regional director. He'd always been a little too interested in my status. Not me, my status. The platinum cards, the lounge access, the upgrades. At first, I thought it was cute. He'd grown up poor, I'd grown up comfortable but not wealthy. Sharing the perks of my hard work felt like generosity. "Babe, you mind if I use your account for the Atlanta trip?" he'd ask. "The client wants to meet at that restaurant downtown, and I could really use the business class seat to prepare." "Sure," I'd always say. What were miles for if not sharing? Then I noticed he was taking trips I didn't know about. "Golf weekend with the guys," he'd explain. "First class to Phoenix on my miles. Suite at the Ritz on my points." I'd say nothing. Marriage was about trust. I learned about Shayna 3 weeks before I died. She'd been my college roommate, my maid of honor, my best friend for 20 years. She'd cried on my shoulder through 2 bad breakups. I'd loaned her money she never paid back. I'd let her stay in my guest room for 6 months when she was between apartments. I found out because I came home early from a conference in Miami. The presentation had been canceled, and I'd caught a red-eye back, using my status to get on an earlier flight. I was exhausted and jet-lagged, thinking about my own bed. They were in my bed, in my California King with the Italian sheets I'd bought to celebrate my promotion. Marcus and Shayna tangled together, laughing about something. I stood in the doorway for 10 seconds that felt like 10 hours. Then Shayna saw me. "Oh my God," she gasped, pulling the sheet around herself, not embarrassed, not guilty, annoyed, like I'd interrupted something important. Marcus didn't even have the grace to look ashamed. He sat up, ran a hand through his hair, and said, "We need to talk." That's what I remembered most clearly. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "This isn't what it looks like." Just, "We need to talk," like I was a problem to be managed. I left, grabbed my suitcase, still unpacked from Miami, and walked out. Drove to a hotel, used my points for a suite I couldn't even appreciate. Cried until my eyes swelled shut. The next 3 weeks were a special kind of hell. Marcus and Shayna didn't even try to hide it anymore. They went public on social media. "Finally found my soulmate," Marcus posted, with a picture of them at a restaurant I'd introduced him to using a reservation made with my credit card. The comments were brutal. People I thought were my friends congratulated them. "You two are perfect together." It's never too late to find real love. I hired a lawyer, started divorce proceedings, learned that Marcus had been systematically preparing for this, hiding assets, building a case that I was never home, that I'd neglected the marriage, that my career had driven us apart. My career. The career that had paid for his promotions, his contacts, his entire comfortable life. The lawyer told me I'd probably get a fair settlement, but it would take time. Marcus had been smart. He'd moved money, created paper trails that made me look like the villain. Then I found out about the insurance policy. I'd taken out a $2 million life insurance policy 3 years earlier. Standard stuff for someone with my income and travel schedule. Marcus was the beneficiary. I'd meant to change it after I found out about the affair, but in the chaos of moving out, finding a lawyer, trying to keep working through the emotional breakdown, I'd forgotten. I found the receipt for the premium payment. He'd paid it 2 months early, in the trash at my hotel room. He'd been staying there, I realized, using my points to book a romantic weekend with Shayna while I was traveling. That should have been my first warning. Instead, I confronted him, sent him an angry text. "I know what you're doing. I'm changing the beneficiary tomorrow." He read it at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I know because I watched the read receipt pop up. At 11:15 p.m., someone broke into my hotel room. I'd been in the bath trying to relax, drinking the bottle of wine I'd ordered from room service. I heard the door open. Assumed it was housekeeping, even though I'd hung the "Do Not Disturb" sign. Then a figure in black appeared in the bathroom doorway. I didn't have time to scream. They held me under. I thrashed, fought, tried to grab something, anything. Water filled my lungs. The world went dark. The last thing I remembered was a wedding ring on the hand holding my head down. Marcus's ring. The one I'd bought him with my first big commission check. I woke up gasping in a bed I recognized. My childhood bedroom. The one in my parents' house in Sacramento, with the Coldplay posters and the bulletin board still covered in college acceptance letters. I was 18 years old. For a full minute, I thought I'd dreamed the last 23 years. Then I looked at the date on my phone, the old iPhone 4 I'd had senior year, and started laughing, crying, hyperventilating. My mother knocked on the door. "Honey, are you okay?" She looked so young. She'd been 63 when I died. First timeline died, I corrected myself. Now she was 45, her hair still dark brown, her face unlined. "I'm fine, Mom," I managed. "Just a nightmare." The worst nightmare. The best gift. I had my entire life back. 23 years of knowledge, mistakes, and hard-won wisdom in an 18-year-old body. I knew which stocks to buy, which jobs to take, which people to trust. Most importantly, I knew to stay the hell away from Marcus Harrison. For the first few weeks, I just reveled in it, being young again, having energy again, not carrying the weight of betrayal and murder. I aced my final exams, easy when you'd already taken organic chemistry once. I got into Northwestern, my first choice school that I'd turned down the first time for a state school scholarship. My parents were thrilled. "Full ride," my dad cheered when the acceptance letter came. This time, I knew the scholarship was worth it. I knew exactly which professors to impress, which internships to take, which pharmaceutical companies were going to boom in the next decade. I also knew when and where I'd meet Marcus, a medical sales conference in Chicago, November of my junior year. The first time, I'd thought it was fate. Handsome guy, charming smile, similar career goals. We'd talked for hours about the industry, about our dreams, about building something together. He'd seemed so genuine, so supportive of my ambitions. Now I knew better. He'd seen a smart girl with drive and connections and a future he could exploit. I almost didn't go to the conference. Why put myself through it? But then I had a better idea. I went to the conference, wore the same blue dress I'd worn the first time. I'd loved that dress, had kept it for years until Marcus accidentally donated it to Goodwill. Stood in the same spot at the networking mixer. Marcus approached right on schedule. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he said with that practiced smile. I looked at him, looked, and saw what I'd missed at 20. The calculation in his eyes. The way his gaze had already swept the room, cataloging who mattered and who didn't. The way he'd chosen to approach me not because I was pretty, though I was, objectively, but because he'd seen me talking to Dr. Patricia Mendoza, the keynote speaker, earlier. "Actually, I'm exactly where I want to be," I said, and turned my back on him. His face went through a fascinating journey, surprise, confusion, irritation, then a reset to charm. "Hey, I didn't mean to offend you," he tried again. "I'm Marcus Harrison." "I know who you are," I said, which was true and also threw him off balance. "Not interested." I walked away, found Patricia, who I'd befriended the first time around, and started the conversation that would eventually lead to my first major job offer. Left Marcus standing alone, holding his drink, looking confused. It felt amazing. Over the next few years, I built my career faster and smarter than before. I knew which accounts to pursue, which managers to impress, which risks to take. By 25, I was already a senior rep. By 30, regional director. By 35, I was VP of sales for the Eastern Division. I made more money, better investments, bought real estate in neighborhoods I knew would boom, built a network of genuine friends and mentors. And I watched Marcus's career from a distance. Without me, he struggled. He was good enough to be average, but he'd never had the drive or the connections to be exceptional. He plateaued at a mid-level rep position, bouncing between companies, always looking for the next opportunity that would finally be his big break. I could have let that be enough. My success, his mediocrity, perfect revenge, right? But I remembered the feeling of drowning in that bathtub, the terror, the betrayal, the way he'd killed me for money, without hesitation, without remorse. Letting him live an average life felt insufficient. Then I met Shayna. It was at a fundraiser gala in Manhattan. I was 36, she was 35. In the first timeline, we'd been best friends for 15 years at this point. In this timeline, we'd never met. "Excuse me," she said, tapping my shoulder. "I love your dress. Is that Versace?" She looked the same. Blonde, pretty in a calculated way, eyes that assessed the value of everything they saw. "Thank you," I said politely, ready to move on. "I'm Shayna Matthews. I work in pharmaceutical marketing." She handed me a card. "We should connect. I'm always looking to network with successful women in the industry." In the first timeline, we'd met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions, and shared dreams. She'd seemed genuine then. Or maybe I'd just been naive. "I'm sorry," I said, handing her card back. "I don't think we're a good fit." "Oh." She looked genuinely surprised. People didn't usually reject Shayna. "Can I ask why?" I could have walked away, should have. Walked away. Instead, I smiled. "I do background checks on my professional connections. You've been fired from 3 companies for ethics violations. You're currently being sued by a former roommate for theft. And you have a pattern of befriending successful people and exploiting those relationships." I'd done my homework. Without me to leech off of, Shayna's life had gone differently, worse. Her face went white, then red. How did you—" "I'm very thorough," I said. "Have a good evening." I walked away, feeling lighter than I had in years. That should have been the end of it. I'd avoided both of them, built a better life, and could have just moved forward. But revenge is a funny thing. Once you start thinking about it, really planning it, it becomes hard to stop. I wanted them to suffer the way I'd suffered. I wanted them to feel betrayed, used, destroyed. I wanted them to drown. The plan came to me on a flight to Singapore. I was in first class, paid for with my own money, my own miles, my own success. The flight attendant brought me champagne and warm nuts, and I was reading through my emails when I saw an industry newsletter about airline fraud. Apparently, there'd been a major crackdown on people selling airline miles, sharing status benefits inappropriately, and using frequent flyer accounts for illegal purposes. The TSA and airlines were working together, flagging accounts that showed suspicious patterns. Sharing status was technically allowed within families, but it was often abused. People sold upgrades, ran elaborate schemes to game the system, even used airline accounts to facilitate other crimes. The penalties were severe. Account termination, sure, but also potential criminal charges for fraud, especially if money had changed hands or if the activity intersected with other investigations. I sat back in my seat, sipping champagne at 35,000 feet, and started planning. First, I needed Marcus and Shayna to meet, to reconnect, to become exactly what they'd been in the first timeline: cheating, conniving partners who thought they were smarter than everyone else. Second, I needed Marcus to want access to my airline status badly enough to overlook the risks. Third, I needed to create a situation where using that status would destroy him. It took 2 years to set up. I started with social media, created a fake profile. Christina Walsh, a pharmaceutical rep in Marcus's region. Young, pretty, impressed by his expertise. Christina started commenting on his posts, flattering him, asking for advice. Marcus, starved for validation after years of mediocrity, ate it up. Through Christina, I learned about his life. He was dating someone casually, nothing serious. He was frustrated with his career, feeling like he deserved more. He was always looking for shortcuts, ways to appear more successful than he was. Perfect. Then I arranged for him to meet Shayna. It was easy, really. They were both in pharmaceutical sales, both in New York, both attending the same conferences. I just had to make sure they were at the same events and the same networking sessions. I watched it happen through Christina's eyes. Marcus's posts about meeting an amazing marketing professional who really gets the industry. Shayna's carefully curated photos with new connections. Within 3 months, they were dating. Within 6 months, they were living together in Shayna's apartment in Brooklyn. I watched their relationship develop with the same detached fascination you'd watch a nature documentary about parasites. They were perfect for each other, two users who thought they'd found someone to use together. Marcus started posting about his elevated lifestyle. Dinners at expensive restaurants, weekend trips to the Hamptons, Broadway shows. All on Shayna's credit cards, I knew. Because she'd convinced him she had family money. She didn't. She was drowning in debt, maintaining an appearance of success while scrambling to pay rent. They were both so busy pretending to be successful that they didn't notice they were both broke. That's when I made my move. I'd stayed completely out of their orbit for years. No mutual friends, no overlapping conferences, no social media connections. As far as they knew, I was just another executive in a big industry, someone they might have heard of but never met. Then I engineered a meeting. I arranged for Marcus's company to pitch my division for a major contract. It was a legitimate opportunity. My division was expanding into new territories, and his company was one of several bidding. Marcus didn't make the initial pitch. His boss did. But I made sure to mention casually that I wanted to meet the regional team before making any decisions. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon at our Manhattan headquarters. I wore an Armani suit, navy, professional, expensive. Had my assistant prepare the conference room with refreshments and materials. Acted like this was just another business meeting. Marcus walked in with his team and froze. I saw the recognition in his eyes. He knew me, or knew of me. I'd been profiled in industry magazines, spoken at conferences he'd attended, but we'd never actually met, never spoken. "Mr. Harrison," I said, extending my hand. "Thank you for coming." His handshake was clammy. "Ms. Chen, it's an honor." "I've heard good things about your team's approach," I lied smoothly. "I'm looking forward to your presentation." The pitch was mediocre. Marcus was clearly rattled, stumbling over statistics, losing his place in the slide deck. His boss kept shooting him concerned looks. I asked pointed questions, pushed them on metrics, on implementation, on cost. In the end, I told them I'd take a few weeks to consider all the proposals. Marcus's boss thanked me. Marcus just stared, like he was trying to figure out if he knew me from somewhere. After they left, I had my assistant send Marcus a personal email. "Mr. Harrison, I was impressed by your insights during today's meeting. I'd like to discuss the proposal further over dinner. Are you available Thursday evening? I have a reservation at Per Se at 7 p.m. Please let me know. Best regards, Jennifer Chen, VP of Sales." Per Se, one of the most expensive restaurants in New York, a reservation that took months to get. He responded within an hour. "Ms. Chen, I would be honored. See you Thursday. Best, Marcus." Hook, line, and sinker. Thursday evening, I arrived at Per Se 15 minutes early. Wore a different Armani suit, this one charcoal with a silk blouse. Looked every inch the successful executive I was. Marcus arrived right on time, wearing a suit that was nice but not expensive. His shoes were scuffed. His watch was a Seiko, not the Rolex he used to beg me to buy him in the first timeline. "Ms. Chen," he said, slightly breathless, "thank you so much for this opportunity." "Please call me Jennifer," I said graciously. "This is a business dinner, but let's not be overly formal." We were seated at a table with a view of Central Park. The server brought menus and explained the tasting menu. $395 per person, not including wine. I saw Marcus's eyes widen slightly at the prices. "The tasting menu is excellent," I said. "And please, order whatever wine you'd like. This is my treat." Over the course of 3 hours and 9 courses, I slowly, methodically became Marcus's dream. I asked about his career, sympathized with his frustrations, shared stories about my own climb up the corporate ladder, made it seem like we were kindred spirits, both ambitious, both driven, both held back by people who didn't recognize our value. You know, I said over the cheese course, I think you're underutilized in your current role. You have insights that your company isn't leveraging. He leaned forward, eager. I've been saying that for years, but my boss, he doesn't see it, doesn't give me the opportunities. What if I could change that? I asked. His eyes lit up. What do you mean? I'm putting together a new team, elite reps who can handle our most important accounts. The compensation is significant. Base salary of $250,000 plus commission, full benefits, and, I paused for effect, unlimited travel budget. First-class flights, luxury hotels, we only send our best. I watched him mentally calculate. $250,000 was more than double what he was making. First-class travel was something he'd always wanted but never achieved on his own. I don't understand, he said carefully. Why me? Because I recognize talent when I see it, I lied. And because I think you're someone who understands the value of presentation. In pharmaceutical sales, especially at the executive level, how you show up matters. Our clients expect to work with people who project success. I let that sink in. I travel constantly for this role, I continued. I'm presidentials. Platinum with United, Diamond with Delta, Executive Platinum with American. I have status with every major hotel chain. It's part of the job. You're always on the road, always closing deals, always representing the company. That sounds amazing, he said, and I could see the hunger in his eyes. Not for the work, for the status. There is one concern, I said, frowning slightly. What's that? You don't have any airline status currently, correct? He flushed. No, my company doesn't fly me often enough to build status. That could be a problem, I said thoughtfully. Our clients notice these things. If you show up in economy while I'm in first class, it doesn't look right. It suggests you're not at the same level. I could see him deflating. However, I said, there might be a solution. Let me think about it. We finished dinner. I paid the $200 bill without blinking, shook his hand outside the restaurant, and told him I'd be in touch. He practically floated away. I waited 3 days before emailing him. Marcus, I've been thinking about our conversation. I believe you're the right fit for this position, but the travel status issue is a legitimate concern. I have a proposal. For the first year, while you build your own status, you could use my companion benefits and status credentials for business travel. Many airlines allow status sharing for business purposes, and it would ensure you're always representing the company appropriately. Let me know your thoughts. Best, Jennifer. It was a lie, of course. Most airlines allowed limited companion benefits, but what I was proposing, giving him my actual account credentials, was against policy and potentially fraudulent. But I knew Marcus. He wouldn't question it. He'd see an opportunity and take it. He responded within an hour. Jennifer, that's incredibly generous. Are you sure? I would be honored to represent the company at that level. When can we discuss the position details? Best, Marcus. We met again the following week, this time at my office where I had him sign a preliminary employment agreement, just to get the paperwork started while we finalized details with HR. The agreement was real enough to be convincing, but vague enough to be meaningless. I had no intention of actually hiring him, but I needed him to believe it was happening. Now, I said, pulling out my laptop. Let me get you set up with travel access. I'm going to add you as an authorized companion on my United account. You'll be able to book flights using my status for upgrades and lounge access. I showed him the screen, my presidential platinum account, showing over 2 million lifetime miles, current year status, upgrade certificates. This is incredible, he breathed. Are you sure this is allowed? Absolutely, I lied smoothly. I've cleared it with our travel department. As a prospective employee, you're covered under my corporate benefits. I created a companion profile for him in the system. added his details, set up his access. What I didn't tell him was that I'd also flagged the account with a custom note in the back end, a note that would trigger a security review if certain conditions were met. "You can start using this immediately," I said. "In fact, why don't you book a trip to test it out? Make sure everything works before your official start date." His eyes gleamed. "I actually have a personal trip coming up. Tokyo with my girlfriend. Would it be appropriate to—" "Of course," I said generously. "Consider it a signing bonus. Book first class. Enjoy yourself. You've earned it." Over the next 2 months, I watched Marcus use my airline status like a kid in a candy store. He upgraded himself and Shayna to first class on a trip to Los Angeles, used my lounge access in 5 different airports, booked a business class flight to London using my miles. Each time, I got notifications. Each time, I watched the security flags I'd planted accumulate in the system. I'd been very careful about how I set this up. The airline security systems were sophisticated, designed to catch fraud, but they needed patterns to trigger investigations. I gave them patterns. First, I reported my credit card stolen and had a new one issued. This meant the payment method on file for my account changed, a red flag when someone else was actively using the account. Second, I started flying on different airlines. Suddenly, my United account went dormant for my own use, while companion activity spiked. Another red flag. Third, I filed a report with my credit card company about unauthorized charges on my account, specifically the charges Marcus was making. This created a paper trail suggesting fraud. Fourth, and most importantly, I had a friend at the TSA, someone I'd gone to college with who owed me several favors, add a watch list flag to the companion profile. Not for terrorism, nothing that serious, just a flag for suspicious travel patterns requiring secondary screening. The beauty of the TSA is that they don't explain their flags. You just get selected for random additional screening. Every single time. Marcus didn't notice at first. He got pulled aside for extra screening on the LA trip, but that could happen to anyone. Same thing in Chicago the next week. But it was bothering him. I could see it in his texts to Shayna, screenshots of complaints about always getting randomly selected. Then I implemented phase 2. I'd been building a separate case in the background, using Christina's fake profile to gather information about Marcus and Shayna's finances. Turns out they were even more desperate than I'd thought. Marcus had $47,000 in credit card debt. Shayna had $93,000, plus a personal loan she'd taken from a predatory lender at 24% interest. They were drowning, but maintaining appearances. Designer clothes they couldn't afford, dinners they put on credit cards, a lifestyle built entirely on borrowed money. And they were starting to get creative about finances. Through Christina, I learned that Marcus was selling samples from his pharmaceutical company, a fireable offense and potentially illegal depending on the drugs. Shayna was running a side business reselling luxury goods she bought with stolen credit cards, an actual felony. I documented everything: screenshots, receipts, transaction records, built a file that would be a prosecutor's dream. Then I sent it anonymously to their employers, the Credit Card Fraud Division, and the FBI's White-Collar Crime Unit. Not enough to get them arrested immediately. Just enough to start investigations, to put them on watch lists, to make their lives complicated. The TSA flag I'd placed on Marcus's companion profile? It wasn't just for random screening, it was connected to these investigations. When he traveled using my status, it triggered additional scrutiny. Background checks, verification of his identity, and travel purpose. The system was designed to catch people doing exactly what Marcus and Shayna were doing, using travel as part of a larger criminal enterprise. I just had to wait for all the pieces to come together. The Tokyo trip was supposed to be their romantic getaway. Marcus had been planning it for months, talking about it constantly on social media. Taking my love to Japan, he'd posted with a photo of their first-class tickets. Booked using my status, upgraded using my credentials. I'd been tracking the flight details for weeks. Knew exactly when they'd be at the airport, which terminal, what time. I booked myself on a different airline, different flight, but the same departure window. I wanted to be there to watch. The morning of their flight, I sat in a coffee shop across from their security checkpoint with a perfect view of the TSA screening area. Marcus and Shayna arrived 2 hours early, dressed like they were going to a fashion show. She was wearing head-to-toe Gucci, fake, I could tell from the stitching even at a distance. He was in an expensive-looking suit that I knew he'd bought at Nordstrom Rack. They checked in at the first-class counter, preening as the agent printed their boarding passes, got their baggage tags, headed to security. This was it. Marcus placed his bag on the belt, walked through the scanner. The TSA agent at the computer screen looked at something, frowned, looked again. Then he called over his supervisor. I watched as the supervisor checked the computer, made a phone call, checked again. Marcus was standing on the other side of the scanner, looking confused. Is everything okay? Sir, can you step aside for additional screening? The supervisor said. I have pre-check, Marcus said, pointing to his boarding pass. I shouldn't need... Sir, please step aside. Shayna came through the scanner, looking worried. What's happening? 2 more TSA agents appeared, then a man in a different uniform, transportation security. Inspector, his badge read. Mr. Harrison, the inspector said, I need you to come with me. Why? What's going on? Your account has been flagged for review. We need to verify some information. Flagged for what? I haven't done anything wrong. The inspector didn't answer, just gestured toward a side room. Sir, please come with me. This will go easier if you cooperate. I watched Marcus's face cycle through confusion, anger, fear. Shayna grabbed his arm. Marcus, what is this about? I don't know, he said, and he genuinely didn't. They took him to the private screening room. Shayna stood outside, holding her Birkin bag, looking panicked. I sipped my coffee and waited. 30 minutes passed, then 45. Other passengers moved through security, collected their belongings, headed to their gates. Shayna stood frozen, checking her phone, pacing in small circles. Finally, the door opened. Marcus came out, looking shaken. 2 federal agents, actual FBI, I recognized the badges, were with him. Mr. Harrison is not permitted to fly today, one of them announced to Shayna. His account has been suspended pending investigation. Investigation for what? Shayna demanded. That's between Mr. Harrison and federal authorities, the agent said crisply. You're free to board your flight, ma'am, but he is not. I saw Marcus's hands shaking as he tried to explain to Shayna, saw her face go from concerned to angry to calculating. She looked at her watch, at the departure board, at Marcus. I'll stay with you, she said, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. No, Marcus said, take the flight. No point in both of us missing it. I'll figure this out and catch the next one. Classic Marcus. Still thinking he could smooth talk his way out of trouble. Shayna hesitated for exactly 3 seconds. Then she nodded. Okay, I'll see you there. She walked toward the gates without looking back. Marcus stood there watching her go, and I saw the exact moment he realized she'd abandoned him. The FBI agents led him away. Not arrested, not yet. Just detained for questioning. I finished my coffee and headed to my own gate. My flight to Singapore was leaving in an hour. The investigation took 6 weeks to unfold. The TSA had flagged Marcus's use of my companion account as suspicious. When they cross-referenced it with the credit card fraud reports I'd filed, the FBI investigation into his sample selling and Shayna's credit card scheme, it created a perfect storm. They thought he and I were running a sophisticated travel fraud operation, using airline status to facilitate drug trafficking, money laundering through luxury travel bookings. It wasn't true, of course, but the evidence was damning. Marcus had used my account dozens of times, always for personal travel, always upgrading himself to first class, always using benefits he hadn't earned. The airline calculated the value of the fraudulently obtained upgrades at over $50,000. Combined with the pharmaceutical sample selling, he'd made about $30,000 selling company samples on the black market. He was looking at felony fraud charges. The investigators contacted me, of course, as the account holder. Ms. Chen, we're investigating unauthorized use of your airline status. Can you confirm whether you gave Marcus Harrison permission to use your account? Marcus Harrison? I said, sounding confused. I don't know anyone by that name. He claims he was authorized as your companion for business travel. That's impossible. I've never authorized anyone to use my account. Are you saying someone has been using my credentials? I played the victim perfectly. Shocked, concerned, cooperative. I provided documentation showing that I'd reported suspicious activity on my account months ago, showed them the credit card fraud reports, explained that I'd noticed unusual charges but hadn't realized someone was actively using my airline status. I travel constantly for work, I said. Presidential Platinum status takes years to earn. If someone has been fraudulently using my account, I want them prosecuted to the fullest extent. The case against Marcus got stronger. They traced the companion account I'd created back to his initial access, found emails where I'd supposedly offered him the position and the travel benefits. But they also found inconsistencies. The employment agreement he'd signed wasn't with my actual company. The email address I'd used didn't match corporate records. It looked like he'd forged the whole thing, created a fake job offer to justify stealing my airline status. The pharmaceutical company fired him when the sample selling investigation came out. The FBI seized his computer, his phone, his records, and then they started looking at Shayna. Shayna had made it to Tokyo, spent 3 days shopping, posting on Instagram, pretending everything was fine. Then she tried to fly home and got detained at Narita Airport. Turns out the credit card she'd used to pay for her hotel was stolen. So was the one she'd used for shopping. The Japanese authorities contacted the FBI, who had been building a case against her for months. She was arrested, extradited back to the United States, and charged with wire fraud, credit card fraud, and conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. I'd made sure of that. Both of them tried to cut deals, of course. Marcus claimed I'd entrapped him, that I'd offered him the job and the travel benefits. Shayna claimed she didn't know the credit cards were stolen, that someone must have hacked her accounts. No one believed them. Marcus's lawyer argued that I'd deliberately set him up, that I'd created the companion account and encouraged him to use it just to frame him for fraud. The prosecutor laughed. Why would a successful VP of sales risk her own career and reputation to frame a mid-level pharmaceutical rep? They've never even met before his company pitched her. Division. There's no motive. No motive they could prove anyway. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I was called as a witness, the victim of fraud, the executive who'd been impersonated, the innocent party. I wore my Navy Armani suit, spoke calmly and professionally, explained how devastating it was to learn that someone had stolen my identity and my hard-earned airline status. I've been traveling for work for 15 years, I testified. I've earned every mile, every upgrade, every benefit through long hours and countless red eyes. To have someone steal that, pretend to be associated with me, use my credentials for their personal gain, it's violating. The jury ate it up. Marcus was convicted on 7 counts of fraud. Shayna on 12. He got 4 years in federal prison. She got 6. I sat in the courtroom when the verdict was read and watched Marcus's face crumple, watched Shayna cry, watched their lawyers shake their heads. The judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. No, Your Honor, I said. I think justice has been served. That was 18 months ago. Marcus is in FCI Otisville, a medium-security federal prison in upstate New York. He'll be eligible for parole in 2 years if he behaves himself. Shayna is in FMC Carswell, a federal medical center in Texas. She tried to claim depression as a mitigating factor, got herself transferred to a facility with psychiatric care. I occasionally check their prison records, public information available online. Marcus works in the kitchen. Shayna is in the laundry facility. Neither of them has any idea who I really am. To them, I'm just Jennifer Chen, the executive they tried to scam, the woman whose status they stole. They have no memory of a first timeline. No knowledge that in another life we were married, best friends, family. No idea that they murdered me. Sometimes I wonder if I should have told them, should have found a way to make them understand what they did, what they were capable of. But then I remember that bathtub, the feeling of drowning, the wedding ring on the hand holding me under. And I think this is better. They're suffering. They're paying for crimes they actually committed in this timeline. Fraud, theft, deceit. The punishment fits the crime, even if they don't know about the other crime, the one they haven't committed yet, but would have. I prevented them from becoming murderers by destroying them first. It's poetic, really. My life now is everything I wanted in the first timeline and never got. I'm 41 years old, the same age I was when I died. But this time, I'm alive. Thriving. I'm EVP of Global Sales now, promoted last quarter. I have a corner office in Manhattan with a view of the Hudson. I make high 7 figures. I have a penthouse in Tribeca, a house in the Hamptons, a condo in Miami Beach. I'm Presidential Platinum with United, Diamond Medallion with Delta, Executive Platinum with American. I have Lifetime Titanium Elite with Marriott, Diamond with Hilton. I earned every bit of it. I've dated casually, but never married. I'm not sure I trust anyone enough for that, even in this timeline, even knowing what I know. But I have real friends, people who value me for who I am, not what I can do for them. My parents are still alive. My mother is 68 now, my father's 70. They're proud of me. They tell me constantly. I travel the world, always in first class, always in luxury hotels. I've been to 60 countries. I speak 4 languages. I've built a life that's entirely mine. And every time I board a flight, show my presidential platinum card, get upgraded to first class, I think about Marcus in his prison jumpsuit, eating commissary food, sleeping on a metal bunk. I think about Shayna doing laundry in a federal prison, her designer clothes confiscated, her Instagram account seized as evidence. I think about them discovering each other in prison because they were both sent to facilities in the same region, a coincidence I may have influenced through carefully worded letters to the Bureau of Prisons about keeping convicted co-conspirators together for investigation purposes. I imagine them realizing they were both scammed by the same person, trying to figure out how I did it, why I did it. Never understanding that they killed me first. Last month, I got a letter. It was forwarded through my lawyer, marked as correspondence from FCI Otisville. Marcus. I almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity won. The letter was handwritten on prison stationery. Ms. Chen, it began formally, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I wouldn't blame you for throwing this away. But I need to try to explain. I never meant to steal from you. I genuinely believed you were offering me a job, that the travel benefits were legitimate. I was desperate. I'd been struggling for years, and this seemed like my chance to finally succeed. I know that sounds like an excuse. Maybe it is. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. Sorry for using your account. Sorry for the fraud. Sorry for everything. I've had a lot of time to think here. About my choices, about who I became, about the people I hurt. There's something strange, though. Sometimes I have these dreams. Vivid dreams where I know you. Where we were married. Where I did something terrible to you. I know that sounds crazy. I know we never actually met before I pitched your division. But the dreams feel so real. In them, you're different. Softer, more trusting. And I'm worse, so much worse. I wake up feeling like I've done something unforgivable, even though I know it was just a dream. My therapist here says it's guilt manifesting as false memories, that my subconscious is trying to make sense of what I did to you, the fraud, the theft, by creating an even worse scenario to compare it to. Maybe she's right. Or maybe some part of me remembers another timeline, another version of us, another crime. If that's true, if there's any reality to these dreams, then I deserved this, all of it, and you deserve every success you have. I'm sorry, Ms. Chen, for everything. Marcus Harrison, number 884724. I read the letter 3 times. Then I lit a candle, one of those expensive ones from Diptyque, and burned it. Watched the paper curl and blacken. Watched his apology turn to ash. Some part of him remembers, his subconscious or his soul or whatever survives death and rebirth. Some part of him knows what he did. Good. Let him dream about it every night. Let him wake up feeling guilty for a crime he can't quite remember. Let him spend the next 2 years in prison wondering if he's crazy or if he really did something unforgivable in another life. It's less than he deserves. But it's enough. Today, I'm flying to Singapore for a conference. First class on Singapore Airlines, one of the best carriers in the world. I'm wearing a Chanel suit. The real thing, not a fake like Shayna used to wear. My luggage is Tumi, my watch is a Cartier, my heels are Louboutin. I check in at the first class counter where they greet me by name and status. Welcome back, Ms. Chen. We have your usual seat ready, 2A. I smile. Thank you. Security is a breeze with pre-check. I walk through without a second glance from TSA. The lounge is beautiful. High ceilings, comfortable chairs, a full bar with top-shelf spirits. I fix myself a gin and tonic and settle into a seat by the window. My phone buzzes. An email from my assistant. Ms. Chen, Marcus Harrison has been denied early parole. He'll serve his full sentence. Thought you'd want to know. I sip my drink and look out at the planes on the tarmac. 4 years. He'll be 42 when he gets out. Middle-aged, unemployable in pharmaceutical sales with a fraud conviction, broke. He'll have to start over from nothing. No status, no reputation, no shortcuts. Just like I did after he killed me. The difference is I had knowledge and a second chance. He just has consequences. My flight is called. I gather my things and head to the gate where they board first-class passengers first. I settle into my lie-flat seat, 2A, my favorite. The flight attendant brings me champagne and warm nuts. I take out my laptop and start reviewing materials for tomorrow's presentation. Somewhere in upstate New York, Marcus is probably in his cell, dreaming about a life where he was married to me, where he killed me, waking up to bars and concrete and the reality of what he actually did. In another timeline, I'd be dead. He'd be living on my life insurance money. Shayna would be spending my inheritance. In this timeline, I'm alive. They're in prison. I call that justice. The plane takes off. I watch New York disappear below me, the city I conquered, the life I built, the revenge I perfected. I raise my champagne glass to the window, to the sky, to the universe that gave me a second chance. To rebirth, I whisper, and to making sure the people who killed you never get the chance to do it again. Then I drink, recline my seat, and let the satisfaction of a perfect revenge carry me across the Pacific. Some people believe in karma, in cosmic justice, in the universe balancing the scales. I believe in being your own karma. I believe in taking the second chance you're given and using it to destroy everyone who took your first chance away. I believe Marcus and Shayna deserved every second of their prison sentences, every moment of suffering, every loss. And I believe I deserved every mile, every upgrade, every success. I earned it, twice. The flight attendant approaches with the dinner menu. Ms. Chen, we have a wonderful wine pairing with tonight's service. Would you like to hear about it? Absolutely. I say, smiling. I have 16 hours to Singapore. 16 hours of luxury, comfort, and peace. 16 hours to enjoy the life they tried to take from me. And when I land, I'll do what I do best. Close deals, build relationships, earn more miles, climb higher. Because that's the real revenge. Not just surviving, but thriving.